many people know, I have a lot of cats. I don't I don't like to put a number on it in the event that my landlord stumbles upon the show.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
This is not a show for landlords.
especially my Bay Area landlord. So I'm pro cat, and I always say that if you're gonna get one cat, you should get two cats because the cat needs a buddy. So I think, Jackie, that means you're getting two cats on Friday.
That's what I hear. That's what I keep hearing. And I'm like, guys, I so far am only in for one, unfortunately.
So tell us about this cat. Do we
This,
know what do we know about it?
yeah,
Everything.
this cat is actually a Central Coast cat. It is
The
a
best
kitten.
cat.
Yeah,
Best
it's
kind of
from
cat.
Big
Terroir.
Sur.
Yeah.
The cat is from Big Sur.
Yeah. I don't
Wow,
even
it's a
know what
bougie
assembly
cat.
or Senate district that is. I know. Um, her name is Pepper. Right now her name is Charlotte, but when she's in my custody, it's going to become Pepper.
That's a
Mhm.
better name.
Yeah, and we'll see what she actually ends up being like, but she's got a really expensive automatic feeder, and I just realized she'll probably not even use it for a long time because we're going to give her wet food, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's got a water fountain. She has a new palm tree like tri scratcher post.
You've got it all
Um,
planned out for her already.
yeah, I did a ton of research, and I bet she's just gonna cut right through every single plan.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's okay.
That's what they
We're
usually
ready.
do.
Yeah. Terrorists. How did this come about?
um, it's funny. I was actually on another podcast, and they asked what my 2022 plans were, and I told them I can only think as far ahead as this next month because of this cat. Um, Basically, I just spent a lot of time with cats in the summer, and I always thought that I was allergic, but after going through a period of just acclimation, it seems that I was fine, and I ended up loving cats. I grew up with Labradors and later on in life, two Chihuahuas. So I'm very much a convert to the cat world, and I didn't understand it, but I definitely do a little bit more now, and I think I'm ready for the next step.
Oh, I couldn't be happier for you. It's like young love almost. It's new pet.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm ready to be a mom.
It's
It's so lovely, and I think being a renter, it's also like a kind of like a sense of belonging and purpose, other than the community advocacy work and politics work, and just ready to upgrade my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're working out here in Sacramento in the near future, then cats are much cooler with that than a dog. So
Yeah,
I think you made the right choice.
cats like when you go on vacation because then they get the house to themselves.
Yeah, they prefer it.
They're like, bye. Do you need me to carry your shit out to the curb for you?
Exactly. Well, what is one of your cats' names?
You got to tell her about Squid, right?
Yeah, there's Squid. Squid has no teeth.
No teeth.
Oh my
He had to have all
goodness.
his teeth removed when he was 11 months old.
He's a little black cat with no
Oh,
teeth.
He's a huge black cat with no teeth.
Yeah, well, smaller than me.
Yeah, small. Squid is, in fact, smaller than Kempa, and he
Mhm.
has no teeth, unlike Kempa, who has teeth.
I have many.
Squid is really the model man, as Nate, my spouse, says. There is not a drop of toxic masculinity within Squid's bones.
oh, thank goodness.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, truly. He is very cute.
He's just an ally to the end.
100%. He's always just like, listen, folks, I'm here for you. Who needs a hug? Though he doesn't really like to be cuddled.
Oh,
I love Squid so much.
He's a cute fella.
I think maybe we should keep it at one name of Cat for Shannon.
yeah.
You can tell Jackie's a host of a podcast because she's like, I know if we got to get rolling. So why don't we get started on the show? We have a lot to cover with you, and I'm really happy to have you here. So roll the music.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard, voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And Shannon.
And I'm Jackie Fielder.
Yes, we have Jackie Fielder today. Jackie, so exciting to have you today.
I'm excited to be here.
You are the former candidate for State Senate District 11. You ran against Wiener out in San Francisco. God, I guess that was last year. I can't tell if it feels like it was forever ago or like last week.
Mm-hmm. Fair.
Approximately 10 years ago.
Okay. You are the co-founder of the San Francisco Public Bank Coalition, which is a really cool, exciting thing that I think a lot of people need to learn more about what a public bank is. And of course, you are the founder of the Daybreak PAC, Political Action Committee. And we're going to be talking about a number of these things today, but I think we'll probably be focusing towards the second half of the show on the Daybreak PAC, who it is we're supporting, and sort of like what that's all about. Just real quick for folks, Shannon and Skylar are not here.
Shannon's here.
Skylar things.
Shannon is very much here.
I'm here.
I am so sorry. I was like looking at Shannon as I said that. You're basically Flo to me now.
I'm here. Oh.
Yeah, so Flo and Skylar are not here. Flo is running the Measure U committee tonight, doing her public service, infuriating the mayor and all of those things. Yeah. And Skylar is doing Skylar things, probably somewhere around the same building. I don't know. Maybe I do know. I don't know. And so let's get it rolling, Jackie. I'm so glad to have you here. We had you here on the show during really the center of the pandemic. What was like August 2020?
Yeah, geez, that feels like the dark ages.
Yeah, it feels like a really long time ago.
It feels like I'm a different person now. But we had you during your run against now Senator Scott Wiener. Do we start that? Where do we want to start this discussion? I think we should start with that one. You're a really interesting person. You ran for office. How old were you when you ran? Like last year?
I was 25.
25.
Now I'm the big 27.
Yeah. And you really kind of gave him a fight, and like, what'd you get, like 200,000 votes? And like,
yeah, almost.
Yeah. You were this sort of unapologetically progressive young woman, Indigenous background. You're Lakota, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You identified openly in your campaign as a queer woman. You are a Mexican American woman, graduate from Stanford, who sort of you sort of learned your way, learned the ropes in organizing. And what sort of led you down this path? I know that you like fought the Dakota Access Pipeline for a while. Talk us through graduation to fighting Senator Wiener.
Yeah, I'll just say it's so good to be here when I actually have a whole brain intact and have energy. I feel like on the last time it was just like a shell of the human that I am because it was campaign during COVID time. So I'm really happy to be on. I'm super excited. But yeah, what's funny is I, actually ran as an open democratic socialist, and there's a couple times where I was referred to as, sometimes they'll call someone a self-described democratic socialist. And they usually say that when they don't really know what that means. Mm-hmm. But instead, I got self-described indigenous Mexican American or indigenous Latina. So, that's just been one of the golden nuggets of that campaign. But yeah, going back to college, I just actually had my college reunion, my 5-year college reunion, last month. I didn't go.
No one goes at 5 years.
No one goes. Well, yeah, no one goes at 5 years. And also Stanford and I have a weird relationship. So, that's that. But since Stanford, I basically was kind of nerding out on police practices and specifically looking at the policies being passed at the state level. This was in 2016. Mm-hmm. Trump gets elected. I was studying for the LSAT and I was like, screw that. Why would I even do that when the president doesn't even know the law? And I basically started organizing around the divestment movement because seeing my own relatives and people that looked like me, people in my ancestral territories fighting against the big oil companies, but also with the power and the sanctions of the federal government, it was just history repeating itself. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do something here in San Francisco. At the time, there was this burgeoning movement to move your money out of Wall Street banks. And I was really on this kind of hook and philosophy about following the money from this police violence and, the violence that we see all around the world and in this country when it relates to immigration detention, private prisons in general. And they all require capital from Wall Street. So It made sense to me to basically partner up with organizers in other cities that were already trying to make it happen. In Seattle, there was a huge indigenous-led movement to do that for their $3 billion in their city council and try to get the money moved into elsewhere. So I got in touch with those folks. And long story short, we try to do the same thing here in San Francisco with our $12 billion, but there are no viable alternatives. They're all too small, whether they're credit unions or small local banks. They may do amazing stuff, but they're just too small. So we basically said, okay, let's just start our own. And we didn't know at the time, but we were walking into a pretty old movement of public banking. And, there's actually more than 700 public banks around the world. And they have just such a range of purposes and missions and lending schemes, from renewable energy to, more carbon intensive extractive industries. It really depends on a lot of the beginning documents and mission. But long story short, had spent some time in the Dakotas while also pushing for divestment, advocating in front of European banks at one point, and really just carrying the stories of that specific fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline in my ancestral territories, and trying to make something out of it. So since then, I can go into like the very nerdy weeds about San Francisco's public bank fight, but I won't bore you with that. But
we actually should have a public bank episode and totally for that. Because it's important, and it is sort of lifting the veil of like, well, it doesn't everything have to be profit driven? And it's like, no, absolutely not, especially not something like this. And in particular, something like this should not be. So I think that's really, it's just a really interesting sort of launching space, like especially directly out of college. I don't know who would focus on something like that, but I think it's really cool that they did.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a really amazing community here in San Francisco that we're ready for it, and are still ready for it and working for it. And that's the coalition, the beautiful coalition that we've been able to build.
And so you were working on that. You were working on, also defending against the pipeline, right? There was police accountability work you've been doing, I think, over the years. At what point did you decide to run for this Senate seat against Scott Wiener?
Yeah, not long before I actually made the announcement. It was pretty fast. And it does go back to the police accountability work. Back in 2018, San Francisco's DSA chapter decided to basically run the campaign against the San Francisco Police Union. And they were trying to write their own use of force policy for tasers. And we and the ACLU of Northern California built this huge coalition spanning across so many different interest groups, Democratic clubs, advocacy orgs, to say, no, you don't get to write your own police use of force measure. So we handily defeated that. Something like 63% of the voters decided to vote it down.
Wow.
And I think we were outspent 5-1, some crazy margin. And in the same election, we also passed universal right to counsel for anyone facing eviction. That was also a DSA-led campaign. So I think at that time,
Sacramento, Shannon, getting that.
No, hell no.
We have just amazing people fighting these fights, but we're just not there yet. There's a lot to be done. That just sounds amazing.
But there is this, I'm hearing this common thread of the launching point of so much of this work that you have found yourself being a part of, sort of coming from the recognition that cops and accountability are not working, that doesn't work together, right? So
totally,
there's something about, and I think if I were to reflect on that for Sacramento, it's we have people who are also making those connections, right, doing that hard work, that are pushing that narrative, and so the glass half full part of me, which very rarely comes out on this show, would say I see you, recognize the work that you're doing and sort of the stem of some of that, and see the connection to some of the stuff that's happening here in Sacramento. So there's a dim light at the end of the tunnel.
There's a ray.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Jackie, sorry.
No, but that really opened my eyes to the progressive washing that was happening in Sacramento, because everything we were trying to do at the local level, or every policy that you could think of that you would try to implement, police are protected at the state level. They have a whole Bill of Rights. They have, obviously they're police unions that have just millions of dollars to blow on campaigns, on politicians, on lobbying, and it actually works. You get some, self-described progressives in Sacramento who, they're great on XYZ issue, but when it comes to police, that's not the case. I'm sure it's changed in the most recent years, but that, in 2016 was still such a touchy subject.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like the curse has lifted a little bit. It's just starting to, anything cop unions touched for politicians was a third rail that you didn't dare touch it. And now it's they're losing fights year in and year round. And it's like, it kind of seems like there are some possibilities there for some real starts to change. But to your point, a huge barrier is these Democrats who are ostensibly progressive, right? They claim to be progressive. They're progressive on this issue and that issue. And then they will just turn their backs on people on some of these really important ones.
So yeah, Scott was one of those people. He sided with the police union for his entire career. And seeing that we had defeated the police union, and then in 2019, my last shred of pessimism was just shattered when we elected our first Democratic Socialist supervisor in 40 years, Dean Preston, and at the same time, our current DA, Chesa Boudin. So both of these wins really just pushed me to think, okay, maybe San Francisco can actually get it together and push for these bolder economic and social policies that we need. Wiener was on the other side of the police union issue and had actually sided with the police union. And he also sided with the big corporations, as he has been doing for his career. And so when he was up for re-election in 2020, I just thought, he just can't walk into that. So yeah, that's basically how I decided in November of 2019, and then launched my campaign. Must have been a week after, something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and that was an incredible campaign to go up against someone who's so well connected. I kind of view him, for Sacramento listeners, as a San Francisco version of a Steve Hansen. Steve in our town was considered this progressive guy, right? He I believe was the first gay man on our city council. He was a number of firsts, and there were some progressive issues that he championed, but you looked at the money he took and it is bad. And the way he voted reflected precisely where that money was coming, if not from the cops, then from the developers, right? And so, obviously we're a much smaller economy, so less money goes a lot further here. But when I look at Scott, I think of Steve pretty regularly on stuff like that. So you went up against him, this kind of a, this darling of the Democratic Party. What's funny to me, and I don't want to belabor this, but it's just so funny to me that old school politicos here in Sacramento, the ones that cover state policy, they are gobsmacked when you tell them that Scott Wiener is not a progressive. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's it's a spectrum. Obviously, you have your absolutely moderate Democrats, and you have your obviously Republicans, and then there's the kind of Scott Wiener Democrat that's neoliberal. They're socially progressive. They kind of have these diversity aspects that they bring to the table, even. But at the end of the day, they're still funded. They may not be funded by I don't know, Chevron itself, but they will have an IE. Scott had an IE paid for by Chevron, or they will,
acronym alert. That's an independent expenditure, right?
Yes, a super PAC.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's, bankrolled by the California Real Estate Association, by big tech, by billionaires, and they advocate for, free market policies. So it's liberal, but it's not democratic socialist. This is, I guess, I would be considered in the Dean Preston camp, the radical extreme left.
So scary.
Yeah. Which is funny to, especially after some of the stuff we've seen the last year or two. It's God, this is we're the teddy bear left, in that space.
Especially in the global context. Geez.
Oh, totally.
Oh my gosh.
So, okay. So you have this fantastic, really surprising, I think, to a lot of people, race against him. You make your mark. You do not win. And I think, like, you know, the question was kind of like, all right, what do you do after that? So what did you do?
Yeah, well, first we got to take account of what actually went down. I mean, we got 33% in the primary. I thought we would get 20 and I would have been happy. But to go from 0 to that it was actually only like 100 days between the time that I announced and then the primary. That was beyond my wildest dreams. Then, of course, the pandemic shut us down. So we couldn't campaign at all in person for the rest of the campaign. But we still ended up raising $750,000 without corporations, without billionaires, and pretty much all on grassroots donations.
Incredible.
We got union support from teachers, from, you know, even we got like hospitality workers, even some trades. It was at a time when Scott actually got unendorsed by the California Labor. So it was a pretty wild campaign, and also ultimately ended up pushing him to, at the time of the George Floyd protests, finally denounce the police funding that he had received for so long. He tried to like flip it and say that I was taking deputy sheriff's money, which is the absolute galaxy brain take you could ever have. But in the end, we did get 190,000 votes. It's more than probably most congressional reps get in their, you know, elections. And it's just a giant number. So we're really proud of that. And we had actually been able to train the next generation of political organizers who, you know, they're working on campaigns now, or they're working with local community or grassroots orgs doing amazing work around tenants' rights, or you name it. So we were able to keep this kind of momentum even after the campaign. And I wanted to figure out how to channel it, because you can't just kind of let it disappear.
Right.
And it's not like those issues that we were fighting for all of a sudden aren't issues. In fact, they're more so. So with eviction protections, we have been calling voters to see if they have the information that they need. Of course, they don't, to apply for rent debt relief or mortgage assistance. And we connect them with legal, like actual lawyers who can help them and direct them to that. We've been doing that for the past, 6 months or so. We've also been doing and testing some advocacy work, calling representatives around certain state bills. You know, universal health care was one. Of course, unfortunately,
is this through
failed.
Daybreak or?
This is Daybreak. Oh yeah, sorry, forgot to mention. Start a PAC to do all this. Do all this and support other grassroots candidates.
Yeah, so you started a political action committee called Daybreak, and you've sort of built out these different things you're doing. Sorry, keep going.
Political action committee is supported by many of the same folks, chipping in, you know, whatever they can on a monthly basis.
Grassroots.
And we've been able to, super grassroots, been able to text people, phone bank people, either for advocacy regarding state level bills like single payer healthcare, or in San Francisco here, free muni, free public transportation, or actually talking to people and saying, hey, are you behind on rent? Yes. Did you know that you can apply for rent? Of course, that's a whole nother issue as far as it's being dispersed, but we wanted to make sure that we were doing all that we could to get people the information that they need. So that's still ongoing. And we're also supporting amazing candidates. We have 4 candidates that we've endorsed so far who are also, they've taken a pledge to reject corporate contributions. Some of them are challenging incumbents. And I really think that we could actually get a block elected to Sacramento.
I love this. So yeah, when I go through your PAC's website, the first thing that stood out to me, beside the campaigns, which we'll get to, was this coordinated advocacy work that I think is really important, right? And that I think that when we're movement minded, we have a number of different groups that are focused on their particular issue. And so much of what makes any of this successful is saying, like, DSA and, the X, Y, and Z folks get behind Sunrise when there's something that Sunrise really wants to get pushed forward, right? And that we all sort of band together, the Black liberation movement, we get behind that no matter what, right? And I think that that's an important thing for, I don't know, it's just an important thing to put a word to every time you're discussing the work that you're doing. Because I think coordinated advocacy is going to be the answer for us moving forward. We don't have a lot of money. Everyone has what they have, but what we do have is people power. And when we can sort of congeal, make ourselves that big fish, we can eat that medium-sized fish,
Totally.
So I thought that was really cool about your site. Let's talk about these campaigns. You have something called the Daybreak Pledge that is sort of a pledge against, you could probably speak to this better than I could, but I assume a pledge against corporate interests.
Mm-hmm. Corporate interests, opponents to single payer healthcare, real estate, all these kind of NASCAR soup of special interests that just haunt Sacramento every single day, badgering our elected officials to continue to keep the status quo going, making the billionaires richer, denying us universal rights to housing, healthcare, education, you name it. And it was really important that I had that because, if I can do it, I really want to be able to support other people to make that jump. And that really shows me and also, our community that you're really about these things, because you can talk the talk. A lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'm for Medicare for all. But then, vote comes up and either the, California Medical Association or big healthcare industry comes in and was like, well, how about now with this like $4,900 check? Do you believe in M for all now? And that's when it gets really hard for some progressive Democrats. So It was really important that we had that pledge.
For listeners, those were air quotes, progressive Democrats.
Yeah.
But this is, and we had Olive, quiet. I know she is a progressive guru,
she agrees.
My dog, and she can barely handle these conversations. Yeah. Olive, shush. So Umar was talking about sort of how these real progressive policies can sort of die quietly in committee, right? Where these ostensibly progressive folks can just like bring this in, usher it in, and then just like strangle it. And this, this is how the rest of us are harmed and how democracy effectively dies in California. It's these committees where it dies because there is no transparency to what's going on in them. And so that's why I think to your point, what you're trying to do is to change the face of who is in the California Assembly, in the California Senate. So can we talk about, I know there's 4 folks who Daybreak has endorsed so far. Can we walk through a couple of them?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, why don't I just go local to you immediately? You have endorsed David Campos, who I believe, I mentioned Umar, he is the chair of the Progressive Caucus of the Democratic Party. I think David is one of the vice chairs.
Yes, David is the vice chair.
Okay. And he's made his announcement. He's got a pretty big following. He got Tom Amiano out there talking for him. And Tom Amiano, for folks who don't know, was like, he was an old ally of Harvey Milk back in the day. And he was bar none when I moved to California 10 years ago, like the funniest. He's actually a stand-up comedian, assembly member.
Yeah.
In the Capitol. And so that was really cool to see. Anyway, tell us more about David.
No, yeah. Tom has every time he gets in front of the microphone, you're already laughing. He's going to say something. Yes. He's got a lot of funny stories about Sacramento, but David Campos was supervisor for 8 years here in the Mission, and actually passed legislation to create Clean Power SF, which is our community choice aggregate and basically our option for renewable energy here in San Francisco. Has also been a longtime ally of tenants and fights against, Ellis Act evictions and real estate speculation, tons of, luxury real estate development happening, obviously, in the Mission, and David fought against that. And, in addition to many other things, he actually is formerly undocumented, and came here not knowing a single word of English. And then
Guatemalan, right?
Yes. And basically just excelled through school, ended up at Stanford, Harvard Law, pretty amazing story, but, comes from a very humble background and knows what it's like to be afraid of getting evicted, of family struggling to make ends meet. And I think that he has carried that through to even the present day. So he's running corporate free, and this is an open assembly seat that was just vacated this month. So I, wanted to make sure that he had the same approach and vision, because this is actually my district. So seeing that he did, it just made a ton of sense to support him. And I'm really excited. That election is actually very soon. The primary is February 15th.
Yeah, this is a special election, which is part of why I wanted to discuss it first. It's happening. It's happening right now. And folks do have to move on this and learn about who he is and who the other candidates are. This is, what else about this? Just, he has a strong following from labor, from the Milk Club, obviously. There are others in the race. Now, I did not know much about two of them, but the one name that stood out to me was Matt Haney. Can you talk to me about the difference between those two? Because Haney, I believe, is on the Soups, right, out there?
Yes. So he's on the Board of Supervisors. Haney actually is a great friend and has historically been on the progressive end of things. But I think that that's shifting for him, especially as this race opened up, and it looks like he's going to be siding with, real estate money. And especially in this town, anyone who's looking at housing, you can see like we have the most toxic discussions around housing that get really distilled into, apparently NIMBYs, YIMBYs, and FIMBYs. Public housing in my backyard is like the FIMBYs. In any case, Matt's
FIMBYs,
definitely going to be...
are the good guys, right?
That's okay, that. I would say that's where I'm at. Social housing in my backyard.
Yes.
Shimbies.
Shimbies.
So it looks like Matt is going to line up with the YIMBY crowd, and I think it's unfortunate, but he's done great stuff. But at the same time, I was looking to support someone who would be corporate free, and that's David. So that's where I'm at. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting race. I think that it's also an interesting time because we have, I think, 2 recalls going on here in San Francisco for our DA and then our school board. So it's a very intense time still in politics in SF.
Yeah. we'll have time for the other three races. Maybe we talk about this a little bit, because San Francisco politics is really interesting to me. This district we're talking about here, AD 17, it is in the last election when they took a look at registration, Democrats are registered. The Democrat to Republican registration is plus 59.7% Democrat. Obviously, borders are going to change because this is a year where we are doing redistricting. But I think that's a really interesting thing, because Republicans are a non-factor right now, right? So we get to have real discussions on what it means to be a progressive in a district like this. And I think the Campos Haney discussion is vitally important. And it's part of why I think the housing discourse in San Francisco is so toxic, because it seems like the YIMBYs and the FIMBYs or SHIMBYs are like nearish on what they want, but they're also very much not, right?
Yeah, they should be.
But I mean, one of them comes from a market mindset, though, and the other comes from no, we need to do something that will socially help the people, and we have to all invest in this. And I feel like these are different approaches just on a fundamental level. And like the YIMBYs try to claim that they want the same thing. I don't know. Shannon, I don't know how closely you follow the fights on Twitter. Not worth it, folks. Don't do it.
Stay away from housing Twitter.
The shit that that Ashanti and Sasha have to go through. They're like with one of the main nonprofits for tenants' rights, right? Yeah. And it's just, I don't know. That discourse really fascinates me, because I think that discourse is central to what a progressive actually should be in this country.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, there should be some overlap in some circumstances, given our capitalist system. There should be some overlap as it pertains to maybe like some regulation. But I mean, we're just talking over each other, because we're coming from completely different ideological perspectives of either complete faith in the free market, and anyone who in the eyes of a, I guess, like prototypical YIMBY, anyone who has any objection to anything about a proposed housing development from any real estate developer, then they're being called a NIMBY. That reason could be they want more affordable housing included in the mix, or because they want some other concessions around public infrastructure, whatever. Whereas from my democratic socialist perspective, the market has failed to provide us adequate housing for actually more than 100 years. And I mean, I just have to go off of my even ancestral and traditional knowledge about what it is to be a community and a society that is that places people in our relationship to the planet first. And to me, that actually looks like a guarantee of housing as a human right, which to me means the profit motive comes second, third, fourth, but definitely not first. And I think YIMBYs will say, well, that's not how our world works. You live in a house that was created by a real estate developer. And I will say this was created on stolen land. And I always like to remind people that Marx's ultimate vision for society, he was inspired by reading an anthropologist who was studying the Iroquois Confederacy and their egalitarian society. And so I think that it goes way back for me, but democratic socialism has the most relevant, I think, applications as far as investing in social housing through the public institutions. For me, public banks are a part of that. We can get into that in the next episode around public banks. But to me, we need social housing, which means necessarily integrated housing that's integrated among race, class, you name it. But the market has completely failed us for 100 years. I don't know what other evidence you need to be convinced otherwise.
Yeah. I think it's so important that you put it that way, because I think very often in our conversations on class struggle, which is an extremely important conversation, right? I think what's lost is how much this needs to be tied with decolonization. And like it really does. It demands us to view the world through a totally different lens, which is why so many libs, they can't. They'll bash their heads against the wall. They just can't view it that way. They don't get it. But it's important to have these conversations, and it's important to try and put this lens in front of folks and be like, this is what we're talking about. And I think in places like, your district, that can actually happen.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, Dean Preston, our supervisor, actually wrote the measure that was ultimately passed last year to provide funds and legalize 10,000 units of public social housing. And yet, the reason why we don't have any social housing yet is because our mayor, who is YIMBY aligned, has held on to those funds and not dispersed them for the social housing. That's the reason. But you can't really know that if you're just getting your information off of Twitter. Right,
exactly. That's a real bummer. And like, again, I want us to put some time to these other races, that because you are endorsing some really interesting folks over there at Daybreak, but I just wanted to take a moment to say that this sort of mod versus prog fight, it's happening on a really real level in San Francisco. Here in Sacramento too, we've got the mods coming after, Katie Valenzuela, our Democratic Socialist city council member. But when you look at the recalls in the school board out there in San Francisco, and it's a far right recall, but then you suddenly see the mods piling on. You see Mayor London Breed, you see Scott Wiener. Haney came in pro a couple of these recalls, one or two. And this is something that's funded by billionaires, the likes of Arthur Rock and David Sachs. So I do think that this is kind of the real next fight as far as California politics go. And I think it's happening in real time out there in your district.
Totally. School politics, carceral politics, it's all kind of, I think, the just direction that all this post-Trump energy is going. Yeah. And especially with school shutdowns and the masks, I think just the conservatives and the moderates have had it up to here with, I honestly think a progressive surge, seeing Bernie get so much energy, seeing my campaign get so much energy. And this is also charter school advocates backing this recall. All the three school board officials that are being recalled are staunch supporters of public education and accountability around charter schools. So that's happening. But yeah, it's really sad to see that. And of course, our district attorney is being recalled. The Republican one failed, but the moderate Democrat one has succeeded.
Right.
And once again, we're just rolling back the clock on progressive steps that we've taken with our criminal justice system.
He is just a totally exciting figure. And I guess we shouldn't be surprised that that's happening, but it's definitely not good to see.
Yeah, and it's in the same at the same time, the Republicans are cheering this on. They're totally stoked about these recalls. Totally.
Okay, can we move on to a couple of the other Daybreak?
Yes.
Okay. So now I guess we only have a few minutes for these mostly, but let's talk about Assembly District 20. You have Jennifer Esteen. How do I pronounce that?
Yeah, Jennifer Esteen. She's an amazing registered nurse, openly queer Black mom who is challenging Bill Quirk, who wrote the PG&E bailout bill. He is the guy that wrote this. And she is just the most awesome candidate. And I am so excited for her race. Has a huge, background in labor organizing, actually worked here in San Francisco around getting our mental health system reformed and guaranteeing mental health care for a lot of folks here. So I'm super excited about her race.
That's great. The nurses union always goes fucking hard. So you got to know that she's cool immediately because of that. I read her story. It's just fantastic. And I think that what Campos said, no. It was what Amiano said during his speech at Campos's thing the other day. He said, a lot of these big corporations will come in and they'll just immediately say, hey, I'll give you all this money if you do what we want you to. And he's like, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I don't want to give their names. So I'm just going to give you just the initials, PG&E. And so when we're looking at a race like this, I mean, this is PG&E is the greatest villain in the state right now. So Jennifer's race, I think, is really important. And the guy who ran against Bill Quirk, am I pronouncing that incorrectly too?
No, Quirk. Yeah.
Okay. In 2020, Alexis Villalobos didn't have much money.
Yeah.
Wasn't well known.
Yeah.
And actually gave a bit of a run.
Oh, totally.
So Alexis is looking at this and saying, I think that Jennifer has more than enough of a chance to win this one. So people should be focusing on this one too.
Totally. And Alexis is so super great. I'm so glad to see that he's backing Jennifer as well.
Cool. And next one, Fatima Iqbal Zubair, District 64 for the Assembly. She is going up against Mike Gibson, who's an incumbent. This is down around Compton, down in the LA area.
Yeah, Compton, Wilmington, that area.
And what's that town where they play U.S. soccer games? Something like, I forget, but that
Carson,
area.
Gardena.
Carson, I think that's
Carson
it.
Yeah.
And that's like my only tie to that area. She ran against him in 2020. I think there was, I forget what the difference was, but it was enough for her. She was endorsed by Bernie. I think she lost by maybe 10, I want to say, points.
I want to say we're in the same range. I got 43.
So starting up again, I think is like for her, this is a winnable thing. She's a teacher. She was born in Dubai, the UAE. She's, she is an immigrant woman who just really cares about all of these things that you talk about with Daybreak. I think she's exciting. She's another vice chair of the Progressive Caucus of the Democrats. Anything else to add with her?
Her opponent, Mike Gibson, this is in one of the most Democratic districts in the whole state. So, it should be corporate free. But her opponent, the incumbent, Mike Gibson, he's a former police officer. He's in the pocket of the police unions, of the fossil fuel industry. This is a huge epicenter of refineries and asthma and respiratory issues, especially in this predominantly BIPOC community and district. So Fatima has a really interesting story around being a teacher and actually volunteering to really throw down, I think, for either the science club or robotics club. And in her capacity as a teacher, had her students go out into their community and test around pollution. And so she intimately understands and we know cares about making sure that California has a Green New Deal, phasing out fossil fuel extraction, because this disproportionately affects the lifespan and quality of life for Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Yeah, she's a really exciting candidate to me. I think that's an interesting one. And to your point, her district is plus 53.1% Democrats to Republicans. I already mentioned in Campos's, in your district, it's 59.7%. And in Jennifer Esteen's, it's plus 42.7% Democrat. These are all districts where these conversations need to be had. What should a progressive look and feel like, and who should they be serving? This next one is a little different, which I think this is an interesting one. Pilar Chiavo, I think her endorsement came out pretty recently, right?
She was I believe our second endorsement this year.
Oh, okay. She was your second one.
Yeah.
Okay. She is in Assembly District 38. This is only Democrat plus 5.1%. And as quickly as Republicans have just bled voters in recent years, like this district used to be basically as purple as can be. This is formerly the district of who was that? Christy Smith.
Christy Smith.
Yes. And she was kind of a mod Dem. She was somewhat anti-renter in some of the stuff she did back in the day. And then soon after her, obviously that doesn't really excite a progressive base. She ended up running, I believe, for Congress. And then a Republican won this Assembly District seat that's now owned by Suzette Valladares. And now there's this fight going on for this seat. And it sounds like we have a tried and true progressive in this race. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so Suzette, the incumbent, is a Republican. And there's a very weird kind of situation in which Suzette got elected. And so we're pretty confident that a Democrat could win easily here. You know, they're up 5.1 on Republicans. But Pilar is just an amazing candidate. She also is a nurse and has a long history organizing with the California Nurses Association. Also has done a ton around homelessness advocacy in her district. So she's also a single mom. She is just, I'm really excited about this particular race because, as you said, we're challenging Republican, and it's kind of a test of if a Democrat running on progressive ideals can actually win against a Republican. And I think that she can. So yes, she's an exciting candidate.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think there's, and who knows, maybe the mods will throw someone else in there to put a kink in things, but like a thing that folks on our side have said for so long is that if Democrats would only speak to people on improving their lives materially, you know, on actually finding ways that will improve their lives, people will respond to that. But Democrats don't actually do that. And if they do, they don't deliver on that. And then we end up with this what we have today. So I think she's exciting because she can be a proving of that point that, you know, why don't we just call that a Bernie would have won type argument? And I think that that's something exciting about her.
Studies have shown that if we talk to people about the things that actually affect their daily lives and in these bold economic ways, then yes, you can absolutely win. And Pilar has a huge, broad coalition of labor supporting her, from, I see, like American Federation of Government Employees, ILWU, communication workers, the California Federation of Teachers, which is historically been really challenging to get, plumbers and steam fitters, pipe traders, sprinkler fitters, Teamsters, Unite Here, just so many unions are coming out for Pilar. So that's a really exciting one.
That's cool. I think we're getting close to time. Can you talk to us about folks who are listening? They're like, oh man, Daybreak sounds like a really exciting thing, and I want to be a part of this, and I want to be a part of progressives beating down on mods and even on Republicans in some places. How can I be a part of this?
Yeah, well, if you're considering running for office, you can fill out our endorsement questionnaire. If you or someone you know, there's 3 criteria. We kind of went through them, but they're the corporate free pledge. And then you have to have like a demonstrated record of community leadership. And then, of course, agreeing with a platform of universal right to housing, healthcare, etc. So that's on the website, as are volunteer opportunities, daybreakpac.org. We're also on social media, not to get confused with Daybreak Podcast, which is separate and my own thing. But in that podcast, talk about California stuff, San Francisco stuff, art stuff. But Daybreak PAC is definitely the place to get plugged in.
Yeah. I would also just recommend folks to, just subscribe to your podcast, because it's a good podcast.
Thank you.
And yeah. I mean, and politics in your region are if you blink, it's like, okay, what did I miss out there?
Exactly.
So you're a good resource on that stuff. Great. I don't know. I guess I don't have anything else. I'm just so glad we got to have you on again.
Yeah.
We got to have you on in like a more chill environment too.
Right.
You're not running for office right now. Like, I can just feel it. Your energy is like, you're like, yeah, I feel human again.
Exactly. I'm right there with you.
I like that it's like a situation where I wasn't here for the last time you were a guest, but a situation where, as Campos saying, you are feeling, he can feel the energy that is different. And all I can think of while I'm sitting here, like listening to you talk, is like you have agreed to do this thing with Daybreak PAC that is like so intense, and this like rigorous work, right? Like working with people who, like these candidates who are leaving a lot of money on the table in order to, or the argument is like leaving a lot of money on the table in order to take up this like really important framework, which is people over profit. And I feel like it's such an important thing. And I think that like, as folks are considering sort of like what to pay attention to, I really like when there's like badass people like creating these sort of like, like you've created this fucking pledge that is like, yeah, we'll back you and we'll give you the power of the community, not we'll give you, but the power of the community will come behind you as long as you don't do this whack ass bullshit. And I don't know. So like Campos like, you just seem like so chill now. And I'm like, what? This is like incredibly stressful. Like, this is not...
I gotta give props to my former campaign director who actually heads Daybreak PAC, Rasheen Eisner, and all of our like interns and fellows that make it actually run. I just get to like, talk about it and find the candidates, but they really make it happen. So it really wouldn't be possible without the organizers and the boots on the ground, which is all the people. So I'm really honored to be in the fight with you all, and to have this vehicle that we can all use.
Yeah, I mean, just thank you for doing what you're doing. And the feeling mutual. We all kind of we only have the skills we have, right? And we're just trying to apply them as best we can to the movement. And it's just incredible when you see someone like you doing what you're doing. And so that's really nice.
Yep.
So thank you for coming on.
Thank you both. Thank you to the listeners. I'm sorry I missed the other co-hosts, but next time I'll be in Sacramento soon.
Come to Sacramento.
Come to Sacramento. We'll just hang out in person.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
In the same way that I like when I hear things that are really exciting to me, I always like to hear about sort of like how to get involved. And so I was over here taking notes as Jackie was talking about Daybreak PAC. And then the immediate, like the second note that I wrote was, how in the hell do I access a leftist podcast that provides information about state, local, and sometimes even national politics that has a really dope theme song and four cool co-hosts and brings on some really dope guests. I don't know, maybe Kempo, you have some ideas? I want to keep taking notes here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only difference between us and the Daybreak podcast is that we have 4 hosts.
You guys are
Jackie,
probably
you're a
way
DJ.
more...
Don't you do your own music on there?
I did do my own music, but you guys are way more consistent, and you're in the belly of the beast, Sacramento. No one can compare to that.
It's quite a beast out here too.
Yeah.
But yeah, folks, if you do want to listen to us, we come out every Tuesday morning or like Monday around midnight, depending on how I'm feeling. We do cover those things. You can find us where all podcasts are found. We have a website, voicesrivercity.com, where we've done many things over the years: news, arts coverage. We've done community voice essays, speaking truth to power. We also do the Follows the Money project, where we follow local campaigns and who is giving what to whom, trying to figure out where the bastards are. We are all on social media, Voices River City on Facebook, at Voices River City on Twitter and Instagram. I am on the Soch. I'm on Twitter at Kempa, YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I am at Shan N.D. Stevens.
Skylar is Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4. YOU.
And Flo is at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE.
And Jackie, how can we find you personally?
At Jackie Fielder _ JACKIEFIELDER
_. Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you folks for listening. And yes. Olive, thank you for nothing, for like biting your butt next to me as I was trying to roll this out.
I love to think about it.
Oh, this dog, man. You're doing the right thing getting a cat.
Yeah, fewer barking, fewer barks.
Yeah, a whole lot.
I just think the owl is right outside of this door, so.
All right, let's sign off. Bye, everyone.
Bye.